So today we have the special privilege of sitting down with John Waggoner, founder of American Queen Steamboat Company. And we're on board the company's newest ship, American Countess, which is absolutely beautiful. We're speaking to you today, obviously, with masks on because COVID protocols are in place, but it certainly has not limited the fun on board that we've been having. So John, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. We heard from our Cruise Critic board members, and they had some questions for you,
Great.
And so I just wanted to sort of take you through some of those.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks for being here. So glad you could be on board for this historic event, I might add. But yeah, so pleased to see you, and glad you and I could sit down for a few minutes.
I'm going to start off with a question from AQ Jazz, who starts with, first, a big thank you to Mr. Waggoner for saving the riverboats and for having the best experience on the rivers. The boats and the crew are absolutely amazing. As I look forward to coming on board again, the pre-cruise documents raised a few questions for me. And so he or she says, the documents mention the hop-on, hop-off buses. And this, of course, is something that American Queen is famous for, right? Having these great branded buses in ports that allow passengers to kind of explore areas on their own. What is that going to look like, at least during this initial stage of coming back?
Yeah, so thanks. So Colleen, a lot of things are evolving, as you know, as we get more people vaccinated, as some stores open. So initially, the hop-on, hop-off will be fairly limited. So it'll be things like where you can get off in our pod and go to a church. So, I mean, you got to experience it when you went to Nottoway. Instead of having things, we had self-guided tours, we still had the mansion, but, you know, you really limited your contact. So two things, or three things, I would say. First of all, when you talk about hop-on, hop-off, all the bus drivers get vaccinated and they get tested the same as our crew. Number two, we've limited it from 49 passengers down to 24 passengers. And then number three, we're revamping the hop-on, hop-off. So you might go to a church, or, you know, might be a gospel choir or something, but it's not, you know, we've really limited it, and you know, to where you're not going into a lot of stores with strangers and everything else. So we like to keep everybody in that protected bubble.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and certainly, you know, port exploration is a big part of this cruise.
Yep.
AQ Jazz also asked, what does that look like in terms of contact tracing if they do go outside of the prescribed shore excursions, shore tours?
Yeah, so I mean, with contract tracing, so we don't have any device that actually traces you.
Right.
You know, some cruise lines may come up with that, we don't, but instead, we encourage everybody not to stray off the path. And if you do, we ask you to come back and fill out a questionnaire and say, where have you been, who did you come in contact with? And so, but I think the other thing, Colleen, is, you know, you've been through the protocols of, you know, the testing in advance and the PCR testing, and as soon as you get on board, you know, having the thermal imaging, face recognition, so every time you go back on and off. But yeah, it's we're changing, we're evolving, and we, you know, but we still think, and I think a lot of people have been surprised because they thought it would curtail a lot of things. But even when we went to, you know, Ginger's, you know, the mansion at Twin Towers, it was still very nice, but it was limited to our host and hostess and the wait staff when we had dinner. But it's still a great experience. So that's what we're trying to do, is have experiences that have limited exposure and keep everybody in the bubble.
AQ Jazz also asked about the crew and regarding how they're feeling about the testing and the vaccination process. And we've spoken to a lot of crew on board who are really excited to be back and doing, you know, something that they love and doing the work that they're doing. But what are the protocols for the crew?
Yeah, so, well, two things, Colleen. So first of all, say when you talk about the crew, just because we launched the American Duchess and the American Countess all within a 2-week period, and I was on board both, you know, to get them underway. I get two comments from crew. Number one is, Mr. Waggoner, we are so happy to be back to work and so happy to be on board. And number two is, by the way, thank you for paying for our benefits during this time that we were off, which was big for our crew members. But the crew member protocols right now are, they go through the same testing, we get them in the bubble. You know, they can get off the boat, but it's just for very limited activities. Like both you and your husband and I are runners, and so I said, well, you know, if I was a crew member, could I get off the boat and go for a run? The short answer is yes. You know, but if crew needs supplies, we'll only try and send one person to, like, the grocery store or drugstore to get things and limit that. So very limited for the crew getting off, but they can get off for things like exercise, go for a bike ride or a run or a little walk. So.
Well, that's terrific. And then the final question from AQ Jazz is actually, it's a boon question. This is now another boat for you on the Mississippi River. Are you, one, what does that mean to have more and more berths? And two, are you finding difficulties staffing up with deckhands and crew and pilots, et cetera, because of your growth?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to say no, we haven't. I think we've had more of an issue with losing some good people, during being off from work for a whole year. So some of them have taken other jobs and they're saying, glad to come back, but we'd like to see you get up and operating. And more importantly, it's not the fact that we're an unknown. I think a lot of people have just questions about CDC. What will CDC do? Will they try and make it more restrictive? Will they open things up? So, but a lot of folks interested in coming back to work. So right now for our first two boats, no issues at all in staffing them. In fact, we have a lot of crew members still asking when they can come back. So
that's great
about that. And we want to get as many people as we can back to work because it was catastrophic for us to lay off over 700 crew members. So we're all about creating good jobs with good benefits and putting our crew members to work. So we're trying to slowly get all our boats up and operating.
Well, you were one of the first companies to come out with a partnership with Viking Solutions with really very clear and thorough health and safety protocols. And also, you will be requiring a vaccination of all passengers beginning July 1st. Can you talk a little bit about what went into the process and what made you so leading edge on that?
Yeah, so Colleen, I don't think it was anything to be leading edge. I think it's just that safety is number one for us. And I think, and you've already seen it because probably half the people on the boat are family and friends. So this is the John Waggoner, big party. But and because of that, I treat all of our crew members like family and our guests like family. So I would want you to have the same protocols, safety protocols that I would want my own family to have. And so I just think, as we start cruising, vaccinations are becoming readily available. I'll just say that, I know from an informal poll, over the 50% of the folks in our group, have had a vaccine. I bet it just in our group, I bet it's closer to 80%, and so people are getting the vaccines and people want to come out and cruise again. So it wasn't that we were trying to be cutting edge, it's just we were just trying to do the right thing, that's all.
Yeah. And one of the things that Florida asks is about capacity. They say their family is going to be on American Countess coming right up on April 4th, and they're curious about passenger capacity. And I'll add my own question to that. How do you see it sort of ramping up over time? I'm not looking for a timeline, but more what's the process you're going to look at?
So I think the process, it's all controlled by CDC. So right now, both the American Duchess and the American Countess are at the 249 passengers. The American Duchess always stays at 166 and a crew of 70 to 80, and so they'll always be less than 250. This boat was designed and built to carry 250 passengers and a crew of 80. So when CDC basically says, look, you can start to operate at more of an operating capacity, or looking at, statistical numbers saying, look, you guys can carry 300 or 250 or whatever it is, we'll slowly operate. But the good news is, as we operate, we don't mind operating with lower capacity. We want to operate a boat like this at 75% capacity, just to make sure we had all our protocols, we had good social distancing, and yet people still had plenty of room and had a good time. So.
Well, the boat is absolutely beautiful, and we are having a really great time. So I don't want to focus solely on protocols, but wanted to ask, a little bit about the entertainment, which has been actually really spectacular on board, and the dining, and what can people expect when they're on board the ship?
Yeah, I think they can expect the same world-class entertainment that they do on the American Queen, American Empress, American Duchess. And so on this vessel, we have a 4-piece band, a 4-piece ensemble. But then we still have the River Lorien chats. We have our special cooking demonstrations. This week was special because there's something known as the John Waggoner Work for Free program. So anybody I know I get to put to work. So, I put my son-in-law, Kirby, that works for Old Forester. He did a bourbon tasting. We had Dickie Brennan, he did a cooking demonstration with another chef that we have, Debbie Thomas, and then Regina Charbonneau has done 2 cooking demonstrations, and then Dave DeVoe that runs Moonshine University is a friend. He did a bourbon tasting. So you have all those things that go along with it, plus the regular entertainment. But I think everybody was surprised is we always have something for you to do, and there's always some entertainment going on. So
that's terrific. And you mentioned the bourbon tastings, which have been excellent.
Good.
And it goes right along with a question from Erico Smith, who asked about the open bar policy, because this is a pretty recent shift. So
Yes.
can you talk about that a little bit?
So the open bar policy, so we used to be our policy to just have free beer and wine with dinner. And what we noticed is that our guests would be pleased to pay slightly more, just not to have to worry about that and not have to sign something every time. And so we just said, hey, as we as we evolve as a company, we said it was one of the things we were going to do. We were just going to go to unlimited beverage package. And I can tell you all my family and friends enjoyed it, and it seems like everybody else has on board. So I think it's been a great call on our part.
Yeah, and I will say, I didn't know I liked bourbon until this very cruise, and I spent time at the bourbon tasting with Kirby, and I learned a ton, and I also learned I really like bourbon.
That's good. It's really amazing when you get the education, and that's, Colleen, it's one of the things that American Queen Steamboat Company is all about. I call it edutainment. People want to be entertained and educated at the same time, and it's pretty educational and entertaining to be drinking bourbon in the middle of the day, in the middle of the afternoon. But you talk about, so Dave DeVoe, I'll just say, that runs Moonshine University, he's the person that certifies everybody as a bourbon steward. So when you get someone of that caliber, to come in and do it, and Kirby is just so passionate, and I never used to be a bourbon drinker either, but they're teaching me, people like Bill Samuels, with Maker's Mark, that we use Maker's Mark to christen the boat. He's become a good friend because I met Bill on several of our bourbon cruises and found out he lives like 8 miles from me, and then he invited me to a standing dinner every Wednesday night where a group of 10 or 12 of us meet. So they're actually converting me into a bourbon taster, and that's why I'm really glad we were able to christen the boat with bourbon also, because it's turned into a great tradition for us.
Well, thank you so much for taking on the questions from our readers. Is there anything else that you want to let people know before we close out today?
Yeah, the thing I'd like to let people know, Colleen, is that, this is just a simply fantastic boat. Everything we've learned in 10 years of, building and designing boats, David Kelly, did all the interior design, which is just simply stunning. We'd had a great group of contractors, I think. Gulf Island did a great job of building it. Jamestown Interiors a great job of outfitting. David Kelly a great job of designing. So I think every single guest that has come on board has just been stunned when they look at it and said, I never expected anything like this. But it's contemporary. It's very elegant. We listened to all our guests when we designed this boat, and the thing they said, and this is a great example, you and I are in the library here, but our guest said, if we could change one thing on some of your boats, it would be that spaces inside, up on the bow, where we could sit, read a book, but watch the river go by. So as you know, this morning it rained, so you and I couldn't go running, but you can sit here and watch the river go by. And we've got, 6 of those spaces. We've got the gym, we've got perks, the library, the card room, the chart room, and the lobby, and also the windows, the huge windows that we have in both the dining room and the grand bar. And so I think people will just go, you just can't get enough of the views, the natural light, the chandeliers. So I think when everybody comes on board, they go, oh my God, I can see, that they spent a lot of time designing this, because this is truly a stunning vessel. But it won't just be the vessel, it'll be the service and the food.
Yeah.
Everybody's raved about the food, and I had blackened redfish last night with crawfish meat on top, and it was just, oh my God. And even someone like Dickie Brennan, a world-renowned chef, said, hey, this is really great food. So,
yeah, it has been absolutely spectacular, and we've really enjoyed our time on board.
Great.
So thank you, John, for taking the time to talk with us, and I wish you the best of luck this season and beyond.
We appreciate all your support. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.